Joining us now is Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio, former advisor to George W. Bush and John McCain, and creator of Showtime's The Circus, Mark McKinnon, and former Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development and MSNBC political analyst Julian Castro. Good to see all three of you. And let's start with you, Susan. What is this rift between the new Silicon Valley supporters, if you will, and the president-elect's base regarding this issue?
Probably it's based on principles. When you have Donald Trump running the party, it can change at any given time. So if you're a principled Republican or Democrat for that matter, you want to stay with what you believe in and follow those rules. Donald Trump is sending out a couple of different messages because make no mistake about it, he knows what Elon Musk is doing, and he's looking for basically a carve out. Now, nuance is never a word I would use with Donald Trump. So this is probably kind of spinning a little bit, but he loves that rhetoric that he sees from his border czar. And at the same time, he's got to please one of his biggest or the biggest donor and his new pal, Elon Musk, and Musk's friends. But that being said, Elon Musk isn't wrong. And that's where the rift comes in. We need to have workers, but we also need to have farm workers and other, manufacturer workers. So this is a big, I think, hullabaloo for the Republican Party, but it will probably just kind of fizzle out because they'll come up with some kind of policy negotiation.
Julian, being from a border state, and anytime anybody brings up the word hullabaloo, I like it. Is this a hullabaloo? Or is it an opportunity, potentially, given that the factions within the Trump administration, if you will have some friction on this topic, and potentially you could have something that comes out of it that they wouldn't have had otherwise that's better in the end. Is that at all possible? Do you see any light in this?
Well, I mean, I think Susan is right, in the sense that, look, this is a skirmish about H-1B visas that are very important, especially to certain tech sectors. But this is also about the rest of the economy that largely depends on undocumented labor in ag, in the construction industry, the hospitality industry. So what this points to, I think, if there's a moment that a lesson that we can take from it, is that we need comprehensive immigration reform. Now, do I believe that Trump and the Republicans are on track for that? No, I don't, because, I think he's too tied up in his base. In this xenophobia. You listen to Tom Homan, and he's talking about things like catch and release and speaking in dehumanizing terms towards migrants. So I wish that I could say that this is something that they can build off of. I just don't have confidence that's what's going on here.
Yeah, Mark, pick it up from there. With Homan wanting to make moves, President-elect Trump, on the first day, who's Homan, and how will he handle this issue?
Well, he's been involved in immigration policy for Trump since the earlier administration, and he is very hardcore on this issue. And so I think if you think about the most sort of aggressive policies imaginable, he is going to be the engine behind them. But the rubber's meeting the road here. I mean, they're already talking about, well, we're not really talking about 20 million immigrants. We're going to go after, people who've broken the law. And so, I mean, the realities are starting to confront the administration. And there's a reason why, I worked for George W. Bush in 1999 when he ran for president, was talking about substantial immigration reform then. It's been a third of my lifetime we've been debating this issue, and it hasn't happened yet. And there's a reason why. It's hard. And it involves human beings. And the other thing, based on this on the HB1 visa issue, we have to recognize, and people are beginning to recognize now, that immigration is a huge. It's gasoline for the engine of the American economy. And so all these things are beginning to collide now in the reality of actually having to govern.
Talking about things colliding, back to you, Julian, and one of the topics I was reading in one of the papers from the South in Georgia about farmers concerned about the future immigration policies, given the way that they operate their farms. There's also from the construction industry, there's also from the manufacturing industry, all of them in the recent days, we've been seeing some reporting that they've got some questions about how implementation will affect their livelihood. Is there a balance somewhere in here? And is that further friction that is going to be tough for them to balance? And I say them, meaning President Trump, as well as President-elect Trump, as well as Homan.
Yeah, I mean, these farmers are in a very tough spot. They know from experience the havoc that these kinds of draconian policies can wreak, and they depend on migrant labor for whether it's, through visas or sometimes undocumented workers in agriculture to be able to produce what they produce. And you can say the same about other sectors. So I think Mark is right. Look, there's the huffing and the puffing and the plane to the base, and then there's the reality of governing and being responsible with the American economy. And Trump is going to have to make a choice. The Republicans are going to have to make a choice. They can try and force something down the throats of Americans that's going to be terrible for the economy, or they can recognize the reality that in large part, several sectors of our economy depend on this migrant labor. And they can try and create more visas. They can reform our immigration system to meet our economy's needs and try and be humane while doing it, and perhaps also find compromises with Democrats to do that. I just, I have a hard time believing that Trump is going to be disciplined enough to go down that path.
One of the difficulties here, Susan, family detentions and detentions overall, as you know, one part of a very vast possibility, as Mike and Julian and yourself were intimating, this is a big subject, a big topic, big bucket. Yet one sliver can become the poster child, such as these family separations, and completely tank the entire policy. What is the risk here of this very issue when it comes to family detentions?
Fortunately, I think Homan knows that he is going to need tons of money to make immigration, his policies work, even when it just comes to deporting criminals. And he's mentioned that before in a recent interview with the Washington Post. The rhetoric is what frightens families. And that in itself is the problem, because we're going to start hearing stories about children not going to hospitals when they're sick, or children not going to school, or people afraid to show up for work. And those things are going to take a toll on the economy. And that's what President-elect Trump is going to really hang his hat on. So he goes too far with this. We're going to see it in the numbers. And I think he has to decide where he wants to spend his money, deporting people or on a tax cut. One will make him very happy with a very large constituency. Right. The other's going to cause him a lot of problems.
Mark, quickly here, fishing up the topic here, working with W. Bush as well as John McCain on this topic, do we expect anything to really happen of note in the next 2 years?
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. It's been a third of my lifetime that I've seen both George W. Bush, John McCain, and others work on this, starting with Ronald Reagan. It's just a massively complex problem. But it's also one that's easy to demagogue, which Trump has done. But again, we're seeing the rubber meet the road. But I also think that this is a place where Democrats have seen their vulnerability. I think that this could be the first major bill passed, because we had a good bill about a year ago that Trump shot down just for political purposes. And I think there's actually a very good chance, because people want to resolve this issue. It's bad for everybody. And I think that there's an opening here to actually get this done.
Oh, so that bill, you do believe, has a possibility, has a breath of life potentially. Got
100%. Democrats want to get this off the radar, and Republicans need it for their base.